Well, hey everybody, welcome to another Photoshop User TV, sponsored by Kelby One, the fine folks that bring us Photoshop User magazine. Make sure you check it out. If you're not a member, you can go check it out at fine bookstores if they're still around. But check us out at kelby1.com too. I am Pete Collins, one of the Photoshop guys here. Yes, I am. Wow. Today I am. Yesterday I wasn't quite sure about it. And I'm joined today by the one, the only, Matt K.
Hi everybody. How you doing?
You know, I've been working with you for about 3 years now. Yep. I still can't say your last name, so I just Matt K.
You know what? I don't wish it upon anyone. So I often have people that we'll try to pronounce it. I'm like, Matt K's fine.
Klasowski. No, that's not it.
I stopped correcting people when I was about 9.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. But hey, you know what, dude? I got an article in here. I got a feature article in here.
I don't care.
Photographing places with water. I was excited.
It is a nice article, it really is. Make sure you check it out. The brand new edition of Photoshop User magazine is out, and it's got some great stuff in there. Corey's got some excellent articles.
Do you have a down and dirty trick in here?
I do have a down and dirty.
I remember seeing that, it was cool. All right, sorry.
No, that's great.
I won't read the magazine now.
Hey, but if you aren't a member of it, Photoshop User, Kelby One, whatever, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm drunk, as it happens sometimes on a Tuesday. But hey,
it's not crack about
I stopped crack last week. Right. Let's go to check out Photoshop World. That's going to be the big thing coming up. If you'll take a look on my screen, you will see that we have 21 days, 9 hours, and 22 minutes, and that's a lie because when this comes out, it will be 19 days, 9 hours, and 22 minutes for you. So it's coming up real quick. Make sure you check it out. It's one of the best places you can go for Photoshop training, Lightroom training, all kinds of lighting, photography, and we've got some of the best instructors in the world. So make sure you check it out there.
Yeah, it's a great conference. It's a lot of fun, and everybody that goes absolutely just falls in love with it. So.
Well, and we both went there before we were ever part of now.
I was an attendee before I ever worked here.
And we love it. So make sure you check it out. That's photoshopworld.com. All right, hey, let's get things started. Matt, you've got a tip for us.
All right, so this one comes from, it actually comes from a class that I've been working on photographing cityscapes. And I figured, at some point or another, people live near a city, travel to a city, whatever. And what had happened is I was always going to a city to teach seminars, and I didn't have a lot of time to shoot, but one of the things I always thought was cool was I'd take a picture of from a popular place to take a cityscape shot. And then I'd use it in the seminar the next day.
Right.
I was kind of using something a little closer to home.
It's called schmoozing the audience.
Yeah. But you know what was funny is what I found is all these people were coming up, where'd you take that? And I'm like, I usually never spent more than 3.5 minutes online searching for the place, but a lot of people were interested. Where'd you take it? How'd you take it? What'd you use? This and that. So I decided I was going to create a class on that. And in part of creating the class, one of the things I wanted to do was make a lesson on some tighter, more intimate places. Like if you can't get back and shoot the whole city, some neat things that you can do when you're in the city. So one of those things, it's a very popular genre. If you look at the screen here, is you'll see a lot of tops of buildings, and they'll have the camera on a tripod, and they'll use a neutral density filter, get a really long exposure. And these clouds start to get streaky, and then they turn them into dramatic black and whites and everything. So I decided to tackle that. One of the things that it relies on is long exposure. So if you have clouds, you want a really long exposure to streak those clouds across the sky. You'll see that in a lot of these types of photos. Well, it only happens that with me, I only had, I think it was a 1 or 2 stop ND filter. And I couldn't get my exposure long enough without totally blowing out the photo. So what you see on the screen here is about the longest exposure I was able to get here. We can even see, let's see, how long was this one? 20 seconds. So I was only able to get about 20 seconds. That was all I could do without killing the photo. So I'm going to use Photoshop to kind of help this one out a little bit. So inside of Lightroom, I did my basics. I took the highlights down so you could see the clouds. I always hold down Option or Alt and kind of boost my whites until I see that little clipping thing there. And same thing on the blacks, just hold down your Option or Alt key. And I went really contrasty with this, so that's why you see a lot of those areas there. But I didn't do too much else inside of Lightroom. What I'm going to do is jump over into Photoshop. And by the way, you could do the same things in Camera Raw. But I'm going to jump over into Photoshop because that's where we're going to need to go to blur this. As I get there, this was a huge 36 megapixel file, so I'm just going to knock it down to like 3,000 because it just takes a while to run these things. Aside from the horrible center dust spots that, if you look through here, you will see all over the place. Can I give a tip within a tip?
Yes.
If you press Command or Control I for invert, it inverts the photo, and you could then always go grab your spot healing brush. It just helps you see the spots a little bit more. So a little bit harder to see.
Your sensor has nothing on mine. Mine looks like a blizzard.
We're not done. I always kind of joke around, like they tell you to like cover your camera when you change lenses. I like eat dinner over mine.
I have horrible sensor dust, and I made the mistake of lending mine to Scott at a conference, and he brought in a picture and showed all my sensor dust to the conference.
Nice.
It was a beautiful moment.
Since this is not a tutorial on spotting your photos or removing spots from your photos, press Command or Control I when you're done, and that just reverts right back to the original. Okay, so we need to make a selection of the sky. I'm going to do, since I have a really easy one here, I'm going to do the polygonal lasso tool.
I prefer to call it the polygonal.
If you're from Utah, that's what you do call it.
Wow.
So we'll just make a little selection.
That's
right
convenient
there.
Building choice you did for this tutorial.
I know, isn't it?
It's almost like you planned it out.
Let's see here. All right. Oh, did you see that?
I did.
There we go. Okay, we're back. So we have our selection of the sky. Now I'm going to press Command or Control J, and that is going to place that up onto its own layer at the top. All right, so that's what it looks like. So from here, if I were to go just run a blur filter, so I'm just going to go to I'm just going to really quick Gaussian blur because it's quick. If I run a blur filter, you see how it bleeds over into everything? All
yes, I do, Matt.
So if I hold down the Command or Control key and I click on that layer, it puts a selection back around it, and that restricts whatever I'm about to do to not go outside the boundaries of the selection. So we're going to go to a brand new one under Blur Gallery. It's called Path Blur. So what this lets you do is blur along a path. You gotta love it. Photoshop quit unexpectedly. Click to reopen. Sure, let's reopen it. See, some people would cut this out, Pete.
No. This people need to know that this happens.
Yeah, seriously.
Yep.
All right, let's try it one more time. I gotta go make the selection.
You
again.
do. That's terrible.
It's got all my spots. I didn't even. All my spots are gonna be back. I'm not gonna do it this time. All right.
Well, what's funny, while you're doing that, while you're making the selection, it's
talk.
when we were talking, we went to Photoshop World last time, and Adobe likes to show us some of the stuff they're working on. And I always like to kind of bring a wish list with me of things I'd like to see. And the only thing I could really think of when I walked in is motion blur. I'd like for it to be in one direction. You know, whenever you put motion blur on, it went in both directions.
Yes.
And I had that on my list, walked in, and they showed path blur, and I'm like, well, I'm done.
I'm good.
I'm good. And so I'm really excited about path blur.
Let's try this one more time.
Look at all those spots.
I know, we're not going to remove them this time though. All right, so we're going to go to, ready? Filter, Blur Gallery. Let's see if it works this time. It did work. Okay, so first thing that I do is, number one, the clouds were not moving in, I couldn't control the direction that the clouds were moving, let's just say that. So what I thought was cool after the fact is, wouldn't it be neat if the clouds were moving like in a direction symmetrical to the building? So what I did is I just take this little point over here, and I just take this little point over here, and I just kind of drag it along the edge of the building. And then I increase the speed, and now I get blur. So I get as if I used like a super long exposure and got those really kind of wispy clouds in the air here. And you could see it just kind of stretches them all out. You could taper it off. Taper kind of hits the edges a little bit and makes them not quite as blurred, but I kind of like it.
You have the power of the wind now.
Right in between. I do have the power of the wind. Click OK, and you are done. It'll do that. Remember, it did it on its own layer, so you have everything up here on a separate layer. As you can see, it does take a little. The filters kind of processor intensive, so it takes a little bit to run. But pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool little effect. Like when you can't do what you want out there in the field, like you can't get it exactly right in the camera. I wish I had a longer ND filter or a darker ND filter, but I didn't. Here, let me show you one more thing to finish it up, because this is what kind of closes the whole thing. Command or Control E to merge the layers, and then you gotta convert. The whole way that this kind of closes up is you have to convert it to black and white. I'll use On1's perfect black and white. And then I just hit it with, honestly, like I'm pretty boring here, basic fundamentals, and I like auto magic. All right, and then I'll usually come down here, and the thing that really kicks it up a notch is a heavy, 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 not quite as heavy vignette. There you go. So we're right about there. And I think, I'm not a huge black and white guy, but when it comes to things like this, I think they just have a better look. If you want to run some levels on it, Command or Control L, that'll boost the contrast a little bit. But these, when you run black and white on it, you're forced to just look at the light. You're forced to, like, you're looking right here, you're looking at those dark areas, like it's the light and the shape of the light that really kind of takes over for you, rather than the color of the sky.
Well, it enhances the focus on the structure and the composition versus the color. Can kind of sometimes take over.
So for my landscape stuff, I don't do black and white, because what draws me to landscapes is actually the color of the landscape. But for something like this, I really do like the black and white.
So
there you have it. Yep. Those, you'll see these photos all over the internet, and that's how you can.
And now you too can cheat without even having to go there. That's great. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to give us a little tip on creating cloud brushes.
So we're all cloudy today. Yep. I didn't know that. We didn't talk about this ahead of time.
Partly cloudy with a chance of cheesiness. All right, we'll be right back.
We are back on PhotoshopUser TV. Hey, we got Pete's tutorial coming up here in a second. Don't forget our Peach Pit ebook deal of the week. You can go over to peachpit.com/Kelby1, use the code Kelby1, and get 40% off of the ebook deal of the week. All right, Pete, what do you got?
All right, well, this comes directly from our comments, our questions that we have you leave for the contest that's coming up in a minute. And this one, somebody asked about creating cloud brushes. And I actually had been doing some stuff with this, so I thought, how timely. So what I'm gonna do, if we jump over to my screen, I'm just gonna create a new blank layer. And then I thought, well, I've got some different ways to do it, but I thought this would be the easiest for you. Here are your top 6 generic brushes, your default brushes, and I'm just gonna grab one of these soft edge brushes. And what I'm going to do is, usually you set up for 100% opacity and flow, and I'm going to take and drop my opacity down to about 40% using the shortcut key 4. It's crazy how that works. And I'm just going to start painting out kind of a little bit of a blob. And the whole idea is I'm going to start creating, in the middle it's going to be darker and heavier, kind of like a core of this blob. But then I'm going to do some random soft little edges to it going all the way around. And I might even drop down and make some smaller, more textured-like effects on it. This is really just where you can get in and play, and it's not super specific how you do it. You just kind of want to create this blob. And you want to try to have it so that it's got this chaos randomness to it. We tend to kind of drop into creating a symmetrical type of blob, but try not to do that. Make sure the center's got a good chunkiness to it. And then all I'm going to do is come up and go edit. And because it's on white, I don't have to do anything else. I'm just going to do define brush preset, and it's going to sample that area right there. Now, obviously, I've made this quite large Depending on what kind of brush you want, you can make it smaller or larger. It's up to you. This one's about 2,800 pixels. I'm going to delete that. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to create a new blank layer. And now the size is way too big, so I'm going to bring it down using my left bracket. And if I start to paint, there's not a lot going on there. Well, what I need to do is I need to come over and I need to use my brush tip presets. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my spacing so that it gives me more instances of that brush. And then I'm going to click on my shape dynamics. And this is where things start to really come alive. You can decide on the size jitter. And I tell people the word jitter just really means randomness. It kind of scatters it and spins it around and does stuff to it in a random manner, as Matt coughs and scoffs at me for saying that.
It had nothing to do with the tip.
And so I'm going to just bump up the size jitter and then the angle jitter, because what you want to do is you want to get the randomness going on in there. You can play with the roundness jitter, but I usually don't. I just kind of leave these around here. And what you're going to want to do is then come over and add a little bit of scattering, and I tend to like to use it on both axes, and then bump up the count and the count jitter. Now here's the thing. This is where you really can start playing around with these things. Oh, let me add transfer, and all that does is make it a little softer, almost like watercolor in some ways when you're doing it. You could either have that on or off, but I like adding the transfer feature to it. But I really want to keep with the scattering, because I'm now going to start painting and seeing what kind of response I get. If I don't like how it is, I might add more of a count jitter or randomness, or even more of a count to it, so that I start to get a little bit different look to it. But here's another aspect to it that may come in handy. Because I kind of like the chunkiness of this, but it's a little too harsh, I'm going to drop the flow down. Now, if you're not sure the difference between opacity and flow, flow is going to determine how fast the ink or paint comes out. It's almost like the nozzle on a garden hose. It determines the flow of it coming out, where opacity sets the ceiling or the limit of how dark it will get. So what I would like to do is drop the flow down so that I get more of a wispiness, and it slows down kind of how much is laid out there. Now that right now doesn't look that impressive, but let's do this. Let's fill this with black. And now let's come in with a white paintbrush, and we start to paint. And because we've got the jitter and the flow going on, it starts to act more and more like a cloud. I could even bring back up the opacity, because now it'll flow softer, but then it'll get all the way up to that white section up there. And the great thing is if the clouds aren't interacting the way you want them to, it's too chunky, or maybe it just doesn't have that cloudy effect that you want, you can just simply go back in and change the count jitter and the count, and maybe thin it out a little bit. Hide that, and let's try another aspect of it. And it should give us, let's get back up on an actual blank layer. And it'll give us a different wispiness to it. And so you've got a way to control how your clouds look. You can make it foggy, you can do all kinds of other things with it. You could even then add a blur to it if you wanted to make it seem like you could use Matt's path blur to get it to go across the building like you want. Wispy. And then finally, this is kind of putting it into practice. Let me get this out of the way. Get out of the way. There we go. So this is how I've incorporated the brush tool down here into this segment right here. I've just come in and added a new layer, and I've just started laying in some more cloudy effects to it, and then I can drop the opacity. I can do whatever I want. I've got all the power of creating my own clouds and my own smoke.
I'm gonna have to try that out.
It is pretty.
My ethics as far as clouds are obviously
well,
very,
that's what
very
I'm saying.
low.
That's what I'm saying. When you showed the thing, I'm like, well, shoot, I can just take a building and then make my own clouds and then blur them as well. So it's all about how you can fake it.
Which could happen because you could be out there on a clear day.
Oh, listen, I have added so many clouds, it's unbelievable. Yeah. And that's what's funny is, we joke around about like Scott doesn't want to add those clouds or whatever. I have no problem.
No,
I will throw as many clouds in there as I can.
Yeah, I'm all for it. All right.
Hey, let's do a contest.
All right, let's do a contest. What are we giving away? Is it this? All this stuff over here?
Well, Matt, I'm glad you asked.
I'll be Vanna. You talk.
We're going to give away Mac Fun's Intensity Pro. It's a great way to bring out details and all kinds of great stuff. If you haven't checked out Mac Fun, they're a great company that you can check out. And I've been playing with their Tonality Pro to do a lot of the black and white conversions, and it's wonderful. But make sure you check them out. We're giving away that, and we're also giving away the photographer's MBA to senior high school. Wait, I put the emphasis in the wrong syllable. It's senior high school portraiture. So shooting.
Senior high.
Senior high. Yes. So how to shoot senior high.
Going on in those schools these days.
I don't know. And then finally, and that was by, that was by Sal Sincata. And then we have Roberto Venezuela. I just love his name. Roberto Venezuela, Picture Perfect Practice, how to get great shots. Wonderful shots.
Great book.
It is a great book.
Roberto, it's going to be his first time at Photoshop World.
That's awesome.
So yeah. I met him last summer at WPPI. Great guy, great instructor. You're going to love him.
I'm just going to walk up and hello, Roberto.
And seriously, his books, if you look on like Amazon, his books are tearing it up.
So we're giving that away because this is the season finale of Photoshop User TV. And as Arnaldo tells me to stop looking at that camera and look at this one right here. Yep, this is the last one for the season. We'll be coming back in a little while, but we want to give away a great prize. Ooh. And how do they do it, Matt?
Good question, Pete.
Well, how convenient. I happen to have it up on my screen right here. What you're going to want to do is go to kelby1.com/contest, and when you do, you're going to want to select the show. And of course, the only show you ever watch is Photoshop User TV because it is the best. Forget the grid and PT&T. We don't care about those shows. Put in your name, your email, your website, and your comments. And this is where, like I said, people have left comments, asked questions. Somebody asked about creating a cloud brush, and we do read those. We want to know more about it. But when you put all that information in, you are available. You are eligible for winning the contest prize.
Sadly, no one asked how to blur the clouds in long exposure, dramatic black and white city photos.
But now But
now you'll know how, so that you don't have to ask.
Yep.
All right.
Well, there you go.
Well, thanks for.
Hey, I'm glad you came. That was a good way to wrap it up. I was getting tired of Corey anyway.
It's been a while. I've just been traveling and busy, so it's good to be back on the show.
Yep. You were out in Washington this last week.
I was. I went to Washington State. We spent about 3 or 4 days in Mount Rainier National Park, and we did a landscape photography class. So not teaching it there, like taking a video crew, so we could bring it back to everybody here. So it should be up on Kelby One in 8-10 weeks or so. But it went great. It was like it's just like you can't go wrong there because there's so many different things. There's waterfalls. There's mountains. There's flowers. There's rivers, there's streams, there's perfect reflective lakes, night photography, like you name it, you have it there. So it's like you can say I don't live in the mountains, I guarantee you'll find something that we shot there that would be applicable to where you are. So
did it rain? Did it rain while you were there?
No, it never really rained like it did for you in Jackson Hole the entire time.
Yeah, I was in Jackson Hole at the same time. It rained the whole time. But hey, I want to give a quick shout out to a Kelby One member, Chris Fritsch. I think I said your name correct. He was a great guy that I met out there. We did some light painting together. Great guy. Enjoyed spending some time with you. So,
well, I'm giving shout outs to everybody I met then,
No.
I met a lot of people out in Washington.
Dibs. So anyway.
Hi, everybody I met out there.
All right, well, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you when Photoshop User comes back next season. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.